Hello, today we are talking about redistricting as it will affect the election for the House of Representatives and midterm elections in 2022. Joe Biden may have won the White House this year, but down ballot races were much better for Republicans. In fact, the GOP's victories in state level elections could pay big dividends long after Biden leaves office, thanks to their influence over next year's redistricting process. So as background, looking at the Constitution, Article 1 of the Constitution establishes the House of Representatives and apportions representatives to the states based on population, with reapportionment occurring every 10 years. The census done every 10 years determines the population of each state, and the rules for redistricting vary from state to state, but all states draw new legislative and congressional maps either in the state legislature or in redistricting commissions, or through some combination of the state legislature and a redistricting commission. Though various laws and court decisions have put constraints on redistricting, gerrymandering is still widespread. Gerrymandering involves drawing new districts with the intention of giving a political advantage to specific groups, and partisan control of redistricting institutions can provide a party with major advantages. So as a result of gerrymandering, you see districts that look like snakes and look like other weird shapes that are drawn just to get certain voters who tend to vote a certain way into certain districts to maximize one party or the other's number of seats in the House of Representatives. Nate Silver over at 538 has put together some good information on redistricting. The basics are, again, every 10 years, after the census is done, the districts are redrawn to account for population changes over the last 10 years. That means that the 2020 election was the last chance for voters to weigh in on who would draw those maps. Both parties went into the election with a chance to draw more congressional districts than the other, but the end result was just about the best case scenario for Republicans. As this map right here shows, Republicans are set to control the redistricting of 188 congressional seats. It's 43% of the entire House of Representatives, reflected by the red there in this map. By contrast, the Democrats will control the redistricting of at most 73 seats, or 17%. And the one state where there's still a question mark is here, New York, where it may be split between Republicans and Democrats, or it may be the Democrats controlling what happens in terms of the seats in New York. How did Republicans pull this off? They won almost every 2020 election in which control of redistricting was at shape. So for example, here in Texas, the GOP kept control of the redistricting process by holding the state house. And we estimate that Texas is going to increase seats in the next House of Representatives after 2022. So they may end up with 39 seats, as many as 39, for the next decade. And this represents the biggest win, potentially the biggest win for Republicans in terms of congressional districts and how many seats they may be able to control through the redistricting process. Republicans also successfully defended the Pennsylvania legislature from a Democrat takeover, although they still need to share redistricting power with the governor of that state, who is a Democrat right now. And Pennsylvania may end up with around 17 congressional districts. So it'll be split again between the Republicans and the Democrats, whereas if the Democrats had won both houses in the legislature there, the Democrats would control the whole process. North Carolina, over here, held the majority in both chambers, the GOP did. So that lets them draw what we think may be 14 congressional districts all by themselves. The governor there doesn't have input into that. In Virginia, even though Virginia is a blue state, there was an amendment passed in Virginia which takes the power to draw the state's congressional districts out of the hands of the all-Democratic state government and puts it into a bipartisan commission made up of a mix of citizens and legislatures. In Missouri, The Republican governor was elected to a second term, keeping Republicans in control of all the redistricting there. Republicans managed to keep their majority in the Minnesota State Senate, and this was unexpected based on polls that were conducted before the election. But this ensures that the Democrats will have to share redistricting responsibilities in Minnesota. The GOP kept control in the state house in Iowa. Republicans maintained their supermajorities in the Kansas legislature, and even though they would have to share power with the Democrat governor there, with a supermajority, they can override a veto. And then finally, surprisingly, up here in the Northeast in New Hampshire, Republicans flipped both the state Senate and the state House. And therefore, they seized control of both state government and the redistricting process in New Hampshire. The one state where Republicans may not have gotten their preferred outcome was New York. As I mentioned, we don't know yet if the Democrats will control both houses of the legislature there, or if there will be some power sharing between the Senate and the House there in New York. If the Democrats end up with a supermajority in the state Senate, they will have total veto power over the state's projected 26 congressional districts. Democrats are close to clearing that bar, but it may be weeks before we know. They're just a lot slower up in New York to count votes. So it looks like this. The overall redistricting picture is that the GOP is in almost as good a position as it enjoyed in the last redistricting process in 2010, when Republicans controlled the drawing of 55% of congressional districts and Democrats controlled only 10% after the GOP wave of 2010. As a result, the House map has been more biased toward Republicans during the last 10 years than at any point since the 1970s. And Republicans have been able to win multiple chambers and state legislatures despite losing statewide popular votes. It looks as if we're headed for another 10 years of Republican favoring maps because of the elections here in 2020. Democrats were able to win the House by a thin majority this year and several state legislatures in 2018, thanks to shifting vote patterns in the suburbs in particular. But Republicans in many states will now have the opportunity to draw new maps that account for this realignment. That said, the House map overall might still be less biased in the 2020s than it was in 2010s, because they will still be drawing fewer of the maps than they did in 2011. In fact, at least 167 districts will be drawn by independent commissions or by both parties sharing power. So if you look at the map, all these gray here, they're not all power sharing. A lot of them, 167 seats of them, some of them are divided, but other ones, like mentioned in Virginia, there is an independent body that chooses how the districts look. So to summarize here, legislatures control 60% of the seats in the House as far as redistricting is concerned. Independent commissions, or states where the authority is split between the two parties, controls redistricting for 38% of the House seats, and then the last 2% of House seats belong to the 7 states that only have one district. So Alaska, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Vermont, Delaware, and I think next time it's actually going to be Rhode Island. This map has Montana, but they may flip. Montana may pick up a seat. At any rate, those 7 states only have one district, so it doesn't matter. Redistricting doesn't matter for those 7 states. But as you can see here, there's a lot of red there. There's a lot of states under Republican control where the politicians control the redistricting. And a couple really big states, namely California and Michigan, are independent redistricting commission states. So without any extreme gerrymandering, reapportionment and redistricting alone will likely cost Democrats their majority. We think right now that the Republicans will likely hold between 209 and 212 House seats in Congress that begins in January, placing them within shouting distance of the majority in the next election. This will probably be enough to gain them the majority even without contemplating aggressive redrawings and aggressive gerrymandering, or a change in the national mood, or a tendency toward midterm loss for the party holding the presidency, which is often the case. All of those would also favor the Republicans in the election that's going to happen in the House of Representatives in 2 years. The bottom line is the Republicans are likely to take back the House based on the information that we have right now, likely to take back the House in 2 years in the midterm election based on redistricting and based on historical tendencies. Thank you for watching this video. Please comment or give suggestions below. Click on the Political Tangents icon to subscribe, and I hope you check out some more of my videos. Thank you again for watching.